Hello everyone, welcome to Capital B half-year results for the first half-year of 2025 and an update on our Bitcoin strategy and our Bitcoin treasury company strategy as of October 31, 2025. First of all, a few disclaimers and risk factors. This document does not constitute an offer to sell or a solicitation to purchase securities in any jurisdiction, and it may not be regarded as an offer, solicitation, or sale in any jurisdiction where such an offer, solicitation, or sale would be unlawful before registration or certification under the local registrations. The information provided in this presentation includes forward-looking statements. Forward-looking statements involve various known and unknown risks and uncertainties which may cause actual results to differ significantly from those expressed or implied in such statements. I also invite you to consult the risk factors related to our business as detailed in our 2025 half-year financial report, now available on the company's website at cptlb.com in the table in the tab Financial Information. Important information about our BTC KPIs, the key performance indicators, that I also invite you strongly to consult, specifically BTC yield, BTC gain, and BTC euro gain with more information here. First of all, an introduction. So welcome to this half-year of 2025. We are at the stage of institutionalization at Capital B. We started our Bitcoin treasury company back in November 2024. Then we structured the company with the Bitcoin treasury strategy and accelerated the Bitcoin treasury company strategy with a lot of Bitcoin denominated financial instruments, and we have started our institutionalization phase at Capital B, being the #1 Bitcoin treasury company in Europe, the first and largest Bitcoin treasury company in Europe, the #1 stock performer in France over periods of 1 year, and the #1 volume on Euronext Growth Paris, with a BTC yield year to date of 1,600 plus %. We have today 2,818 BTC on our treasury. We have experienced plus 600% growth since the adoption of our Bitcoin standard, and we have the #4 investor community globally for Bitcoin treasury company investors, after raising 280 million euros year to date to lead the institutional adoption of Bitcoin in Europe, with a leadership team of capital markets experts, with Jean-François Descaves, the ex-president of an asset manager in France, Ludovic Chochin-Laurent, the co-founder as well of Capital Union Bank, the largest independent bank in the Bahamas, and Jean-Philippe Casadepac-Soulet, who's been leading the way in technology consulting since 25 years, and myself, Alexandre Lézé, board member and director of Bitcoin Strategy. I joined back in November 2024 to launch the Bitcoin treasury company strategy with this excellent team, and together with our core team that we would like to all thank today for their amazing work every day: Simon Elbaz, our Chief Financial Officer, Bruno Damé, our Chief Operating Officer for Iorga, our subsidiary focused on web development services, Cindy Roussel Triman, Chief Operating Officer, our lead for our data intelligence and AI services that we'll talk more about later on, Amal Zayani, MetaDev Free Managing Director, who is leading the way now in our Bitcoin technology development initiative, including running our own Bitcoin nodes. Valentin Kozanovic, Deputy Director of Bitcoin Strategy, who is leading the way in all our Bitcoin initiatives, and Florence Imblé, who has recently joined as Bitcoin Legal Operations Manager. We have a capitalization table of long-term strategic Bitcoin investors. Fulgur Ventures, the largest Bitcoin venture capital fund in the world. Adam Back, the only person cited in the Bitcoin white paper and Bitcoin legend, and who's been a major investor in the Bitcoin treasury company sector, and that we are very much honored together with our other strategic investors to have on board. UTXO Management, the investment branch of the BTC Inc. Bitcoin Magazine corporations, and Tobam, the leading French asset manager for Bitcoin since 2017 and in Bitcoin treasury companies since 2020, who is definitely a major partner for Capital B since the very beginning as well. Today, we have more than 40 major institutional investors in our capitalization table as well. 90 plus countries represented by our shareholders, including a very strong local base of shareholders that I would like to very much thank in France. Merci beaucoup. 46% of French shareholders, 40% of EU-based shareholders outside of France, 11% of American investors, and 3% all over the world. And Capital B has been supported with this base by world-class institutional investors. Let's get straight into our half-year results before going more in detail into our full BTC strategy update as of today. So, executive summary. The key takeaways are that the group adjusted EBITDA is at minus 0.6 million euros, including notably 1.2 million of Bitcoin treasury company costs. What you will notice is that the traditional financial statements preparation is not that fitted for a Bitcoin treasury company. What we can highlight is a positive operational business EBITDA of up to plus 66% to plus 0.6 million versus the first half year of 2024. And overall group net income also impacted by the Bitcoin treasury company costs, because the Bitcoin treasury company results can really only be seen on the balance sheet and not on the P&L. And so here what you can see is that the overall group operational treasury has been up by 100% to 1.5 million as of versus December 2024, and that as of September 2025, we have an operational treasury of 4.3 million euros and an additional 59 Bitcoin for operational needs, segmented, of course, from the Bitcoin that we hold as a strategic Bitcoin reserve. We also conservatively manage our operational treasury with 4.3 million euros of treasury as of September 2025, and with 59 Bitcoin additional for operational needs, so about 9 to 10 million euros of operational treasury in euro and Bitcoin as well, to make sure that Capital B is very strong in the capital markets ambitions that we have, and that we don't have to do a capital market operation, rather than we pursue the best opportunities in our hands. So when we look at our financial results, what we want to highlight is, of course, our operational profitability with an adjusted EBITDA of plus 500K, with, as you can notice, a slight major difference between the revenue of half year 2024 and half year 2025. That is mainly related to the difference of staff turnover that happened with the restructuring that the group undertook since December 2023, with a focus on profitability and an increase of plus 60% of the operational EBITDA, demonstrating profitability improvements, with as well about a flat operating income with very low variation, and same for the financial result, and as well some non-recurring income variation impacted by the sale of a subsidiary back in half year 2024. When we look at the overall income statement, you can see that overall capital B half year results from an operational income statement perspective are impacted by the costs of the Bitcoin Treasury Company strategy, including, of course, such as salaries, including the cost of the operations that we structure, and the benefits of those operations, as we will see a bit later on, are to be seen more on the balance sheet side. There is also a financial result variation, mainly impacted by 400K of foreign exchange gain recognition. So an operational EBITDA increased by 66%, with the great work of our subsidiaries, Iorga, MetaDev within Iorga, and Triman, with a positive EBITDA. When we look a bit closer to our Bitcoin Treasury Company operating costs and operational treasury, we see that there has been, of course, an uptake because most of the Bitcoin that we acquired over the period since the launch of the strategy in 2024 to June 2025 has been with the Bitcoin Treasury Company strategy, with operating costs of 1.2 million in half year 2025. And you can put that in perspective with our group operational treasury and the BTC that we hold separately from our reserve for the strategic reserve of 59 BTC. That is not included in the KPIs published by the company, but that is very important for the company to maintain now both 4.3 million euros of cash operational treasury as of Q3 2025, and 59 BTC, representing about plus 5 million euros additional as of Q3 2025. So when we look at the balance sheet, you can see the results of those investments with plus 13x of current assets and plus 4x of equity. That is not very common in traditional finance, and it is quite impressive to see the plus 1,239% observed in current assets and plus 300% observed in equity, and of course the equivalent increase of the equity and liability side with the capital increases and issuance of convertible bonds denominated in BTC. Very important because they don't add credit risk on the operation, and so there is no leverage to acquire Bitcoin. So a quick look at Capital B operational activities before diving into the BTC strategy. Capital B is, of course, Europe's first Bitcoin treasury company, and as such, we develop operational activities for our treasury. And we have as well Iorga, and a subsidiary focused on tailor-made web application with a new modular web blockchain integration platform to integrate Bitcoin type technologies and decentralized technology, with notably MetaDev 3, who's been now leading the way in Bitcoin core network infrastructure development and node running that we will talk more later on in future press releases, but that we are very excited about for the future of Bitcoin capital markets by running our own Bitcoin Lightning liquid nodes and providing network infrastructure, notably for the tokenization of financial instrument on Bitcoin. Treman, leading in data intelligence and AI consulting with a new mobile data intelligence application for sports performance analytics that we are also quite excited about, with some of the most leading sports teams in France. Iorga is indeed delivering tailor-made digital applications with front-end and back-end design and development, applicative maintenance services, IT expertise and advisory services, with the full stack development, and as well blockchain-based applications with MetaDev3, and Treman for AI strategy advisory, data engineering, data science and AI analytics, data and business intelligence. So please feel free to reach out to the group and to each of those companies that we are very happy to develop further, notably as well for the Bitcoin ecosystem, from which we get a lot of solicitations and that we are very excited about for the future. So now let's deep dive into our Bitcoin treasury company strategy. First of all, Bitcoin is on its path to become the world's most valuable asset. Its market capitalization is tracking the steps of gold. There is a long way to go, but today Bitcoin has a market capitalization of more than 2 trillion and is on its path to becoming a form of digital gold which has properties that are much better than gold, as it's the only asset on earth that has absolute scarcity based on the most decentralized and secure cryptographic network in the world, backed by real-world energy representing about 21 nuclear reactor equivalent of energy distributed over the world and not dependent of a centralized party. And so in that way, BlackRock and many other leading financial institutions are definitely tapping into Bitcoin as the best asset for a hedge against debasement. But when you realize that Bitcoin is the best asset in a context of monetary and active monetary devaluation, then the rational thing to do is not only to see it as a hedge, is to see it as an opportunity and to take advantage of this opportunity to accumulate the best asset on earth with a publicly listed entity that can provide Bitcoin amplified returns. In this context, Bitcoin is already the 8th most valuable asset in the world and quickly going up in the ranks towards gold. Bitcoin, in that regard, is emerging as the best sovereign reserve of value. You can see that nation states are accumulating Bitcoin at a very fast pace. The United States government has declared that Bitcoin is a strategic reserve asset. And more recently, France also, with a group of parliamentary, has been proposing that France could have the ambition to accumulate 2% of Bitcoin supply, Bitcoin total supply of 21 million. And according to UTXO management projections, there could be a case where nation states could accumulate by swapping gold reserves into Bitcoin and estimate 7% of the total Bitcoin supply, either through as well mining, either through swapping BTC, swapping gold into BTC, or directly buying into the market as well with fiat currency. So that is very exciting, I think, for the overall ecosystem. You can see on this chart that is already a very broad and diverse set of countries that are adopting Bitcoin, and that it is already very much decentralized, even at the nation state level. In this sense, Bitcoin is also having its corporate mass adoption moment. You can see that the outflows are coming mostly from individuals that hold the most of the Bitcoin today, 69%. And those are individuals that have been holding Bitcoin for a very long time, and they are effectively transferring that Bitcoin to institutions, to Bitcoin treasury companies, to funds, to ETFs, over corporations. And Bitcoin is being eaten by the day by corporations and institutions as Bitcoin gets into the scene of government level reserve of value. And in this context, 180 plus public companies are now holding Bitcoin. That's plus 260% year to date. Bitcoin treasury companies now hold more than 1 million BTC. That is about $100 billion accumulated Bitcoin treasury company market cap. And with inflows from corporate buy of Bitcoin of 43 billion year to date, which is of course growing and up and to the right. And in this context, Capital B is the most active, first and largest Bitcoin treasury company in Europe. In fact, Capital B has been the world's third digital equity issuer, meaning Bitcoin-backed equity issuer in the world. After Strategy in the US, Metaplanet in Japan, Capital B has been leading the way as a first mover over in Europe, in Paris. And since then, many other Bitcoin treasury companies have emerged in 2025, proving that this opportunity is the opportunity of a lifetime and creating an industry and amplifying the opportunities for Bitcoin treasury companies to continue issuing digital equity and as well digital credit, which is definitely a major differentiator in the industry. In fact, it is not always known, but Capital B is the world's second digital credit issuer. Strategy has been leading the way and creating an industry with the preferred stocks that are eating the traditional finance of monetary funds and retirement accounts. Capital B has been leading the way in BTC denominated convertible notes that are eating not only traditional finance but as well Bitcoin finance, with the possibility for very high net worth individuals, for very wealthy private corporations to get a potential exposure not only on Bitcoin but in the potential outperformance of a Bitcoin treasury company. And then as well, of course, more innovation coming from the smarter web, Metaplanet, H100, and many more. And in this context, Capital B is a Bitcoin standard era digital credit pioneer, and we are focused on creating more digital credit products for the European market and our global investors. In this context, our FY 2025 and onwards strategic focus has been to build a BTC native treasury of the most institutional grade nature with BTC permanent capital, with BTC denominated convertible notes without credit risk, with in progress BTC alliances, both in Europe and in the Middle East, with private placements of major sizes for Europe, public offerings that we are definitely looking at and in progress as well, credit instruments for institutions that we are also definitely working on, and the local market, definitely, of course, in France and the EU, with very special benefits in terms of tax advantage and inclusion in brokerage accounts without tax impacts on the buy and sell of the stock. And international markets with a delayed but hopefully to come full US OTC ticker pending FINRA approval, and tokenized markets with the intention to have our stock tokenized on Bitcoin layer liquid with a partner, a stocker in Luxembourg. And with all of these initiatives, all focused on maximizing the number of Bitcoin per fully diluted share over time, Capital B is building an institutional BTC yield generation engine. The institutionalization phase can sometimes take a bit of time, but we believe that this is the correct way to grow towards the 10,000 BTC and the 30,000 BTC and the 42,000 BTC as fast as possible, to issue the best quality digital equity and digital credit instruments over in Europe, to continue consolidating our leadership in Europe, and to build the strongest balance sheet over in Europe. Capital B has very clear principles that are very easy to forget for many companies, but that we think about every day in all we do: to raise capital, to accumulate Bitcoin, to hold Bitcoin forever, to not lose the Bitcoin, and to not sell the Bitcoin. With this strategy, inspired of course by Strategy and Metaplanet, we have generated in half year 2025 1,200% BTC yield, with now as of Q3 2025 more than 1,600% BTC yield, as well plus 521 sats per share, plus 1,700 BTC added to the balance sheet, and the share performance for the first half of the year of plus 1,200% share performance. We are mobilizing financial instruments of different nature to maximize BTC yield, actually in a very equilibrated way, with equity type instruments in private placement, in ATM type structure, in share subscription warrants, that has generated in the first half 1,224 BTC on the balance sheet, and Bitcoin denominated convertible bonds that have generated 1,500 plus BTC on the balance sheet, with the full focus of all of these instruments and the new ones to come, hopefully at some point in the future, to maximize BTC yield, the increase of the number of Bitcoin per fully diluted share over time. Capital B is focused on the long-term BTC return amplification. The asset manager Tobam has mathematically demonstrated how Bitcoin treasury companies can outperform BTC, and that is related to three factors: the BTC yield, the BTC performance, of course, of Bitcoin itself, and the MNAV premium. In fact, Capital B has maintained one of the highest MNAV, the valuation of the market compared to the BTC on the balance sheet in the industry. It's one of the only Bitcoin treasury companies with strategy that has maintained all along a positive MNAV that is related to many factors. Most importantly, a very distinguished capitalization table with some of the most important and long-term focused investors, trust in the management team to maximize BTC yield and continue delivering on the potential of target obliteration with major type operations that sometimes take some time, but that we are very much focused on every day in Europe, in the Middle East, and in all other types of markets where we can act definitely. And so in this way, Capital B aims to be the best risk-adjusted way to outperform Bitcoin. We have engaged in an institutional global expansion. We have a subsidiary, we have the headquarters in Paris, a subsidiary in Luxembourg, and another subsidiary ongoing in Abu Dhabi where I am now personally based. As well, of course, as I mentioned, the US OTC listing that we are very much looking forward to have. A global footprint, global capital, and global accessibility is definitely our focus. Capital B, very importantly, is also focused on becoming and strengthening its mass market Bitcoin exposure catalysts with now life insurance flows exposure through TOBAM most diversified portfolio with an allocation of 4.5% in this unique portfolio, including strategy, including Coinbase and other major companies, and with global equity flows exposure through Bitwise Bitcoin Standard Corporation's ETF. Here you have the Bitcoin treasury companies focused on the model that are in the Bitcoin Standard Corporation ETF. And here you can see a major allocation to Capital B with an unparalleled access to passive capital flows over in Europe. Capital B is also in the global top 5 of shareholder communities, in the top 4 actually, with 2.4K active shareholder community on X, on Discord, on Reddit, and I would like to personally and on behalf of the team very much thank each of you for all of your contributions, all of your feedback, and I will make sure to address all of your questions as well concerning this half-year report and about this BTC strategy. And I guess that we could organize a live Q&A very soon to address all of those questions. Very much thank you to Be The Moon, to Zinx, to Frank, to Pierre, and many more for all of your contributions. We very much appreciate it and are very much looking forward to meeting many of you in Amsterdam, in Prague, very soon in November, and in Paris as well. Capital B, as you've seen, is very much committed to accelerate Bitcoin education. We are Bitcoin maximalists. We work for Bitcoin. We are focused on sharing Bitcoin knowledge, taking a step back, understanding Bitcoin, understanding corporate finance, understanding capital markets, understanding a Bitcoin treasury company, because we see this as the opportunity of a lifetime, and Bitcoin itself should be understood in order to look into a Bitcoin treasury company. With that respect, I would like to thank many of our contributors in the live streams that we organize: Pierre Rochard, Adam Bach, of course, Yves Chefati, and as well live streams that we organize with members of the team. Valentin, thank you very much, together with Be The Moon and Zinx. Of course, Daniela, that is not on this slide, but who's been very much active together with us and our shareholder community. And last but not least, Florent Simblé, who is also organizing a Bitcoin in Business conference in Belgium very soon, where you could join and meet the Capital B team. And so in that way, Capital B is really at the forefront of digital investor relations and has also been contributing in traditional newspapers and traditional media to educate about Bitcoin and Bitcoin treasury companies. And in fact, I will be giving a major keynote in Paris very soon, 14th of November, with a 500 people audience in the heart of Paris in the Old French Stock Exchange, where I would love to meet a lot of you. But Bitcoin treasury companies is not only about communication, it's about key performance metrics. And I would like to get into a lot of those details with you today. BTC yield, BTC gain, BTC fiat gain, BTC NAV, NAV per share, MNAV, PBID, a metric invented by our peers at Smarter Web in the UK, Jesse, Andrew. Thank you for that contribution. And Capital B, in that regard, has published a very detailed dashboard for the analytics of its Bitcoin treasury company. In fact, our dashboard that's been delivered with the service of mnav.com that we would like to very much thank, has been setting a standard for the industry. And after tailoring with mnav.com that dashboard for us and for the needs of our shareholders and for investors, legend investors like Adam Back and Yves Chefati and so on, we are very much happy to have contributed in this way as well to the transparency of the different metrics of a Bitcoin treasury company for the overall industry. And that dashboard can now be as well found in other platforms for other Bitcoin treasury companies. We target to provide enhanced market and investor access to maximize those key performance indicators, to maximize that BTC yield. The European market for equity instruments is a 10 trillion market. The credit market for the EU is 27 trillion euros, and the monetary market is 17 trillion euros. And so Capital B is focused on building the strongest balance sheet to issue the best form and the most resilient form of ordinary share instrument, of course, with the common stock that provides amplified Bitcoin returns, with convertible bond type structures, both in BTC denominated and potentially, if it makes sense in the future, in fiat type ways with institutions. Other equity-linked credit instruments, of course, providing optional exposure to the stock, providing predictable interest payment type instruments, and providing potentially higher returns than the rates that can be observed over in the EU that are absolutely low. Capital B, as you know, has been launching the world's first BTC convertible bonds that you can study more in detail here. And if you look more in detail into our BTC denominated convertible bond structures that are quite unique, focused on the long term with 5-year minimum maturity to date. If you look at the maturity dates, it's all 2030. And it's all fully collateralized because we have on one side a debt denominated in Bitcoin and on the other side Bitcoin. So there is no leverage on the balance sheet. There is no credit risk. And in fact, if you look at the right side of the slide, you will see that we have acquired 57% of our Bitcoin through this instrument. And that can tell you the power of being the second issuer of digital credit in the world, but in a way that doesn't add any credit risk to the balance sheet, at least segmented to the instrument, of course. And out of those instruments, it is worth noting that 82% have either been converted or already in the money, meaning that they already meet the conditions for the conversion into the stock by investors. The most typical question that we get from investors is, what about the conversion in the common stock? And the response that we have is that this is a major opportunity for the company to increase its market capitalization with the conversion in the stock, specifically with the conversion by very long-term oriented investors such as Fulcor Ventures, Tobam, Adam Back, and many more with UTXO Management and of course Ludovic Chauchin-Laurent. And so Capital B has never been stronger in terms of balance sheet, both in terms of the strategic reserve and as well, as I mentioned, in terms of the BTC that we hold separately for our operational needs. Capital B has also launched the first ATM type structure in France to accumulate BTC. This program, as you may have noticed recently, has been suspended by the management of the company because the levels of MNAV we considered were not necessarily where we believe it would be appropriate. And so in that case, of course, in partnership with Tobam, we have suspended the ATM for now. Capital B focuses on maximizing Bitcoin per share over time. In that respect, if you zoom out a little bit, you will notice that Capital B is outperforming Bitcoin by more than 3x. It is up 600% since the launch of the strategy, while Bitcoin is up 53%. Over different time periods, 6 months, it's also up and outperforming Bitcoin, while Bitcoin is almost flat. And we have increased the number of sats per share from 41 sats per share to 700 sats per share, and that is an increase of 1,600% BTC yield year to date. Our year to date returns largely outperform the different large asset classes. We can be told that those asset classes are much larger in size than Capital B, but investors, and typically Bitcoin investors, don't really like to invest in fiat-based instruments. And this is to demonstrate as well that a Bitcoin treasury company is definitely outperforming traditional type portfolios. And when you look at the year-to-date return, you can notice that Bitcoin is up 4%, while Capital B is up 200%. Capital B is in fact the most exchanged stock on Euronext Growth by far. It is the number 67 in France of all stocks traded in Paris. In fact, in some days, Capital B already has volumes that are of the levels of the CAC 40, the 40 biggest company in France. And so I let you imagine, depending on Bitcoin trajectory and Capital B ability to tap into EU digital equity and digital credit markets, the potential of monstrous volumes that Capital B could reach in the future. Capital B Bitcoin net asset value is now 22x higher than the initial market cap of the company when we launched the strategy back in November 2024. And in fact, a very important factor to look at is how misvalued Bitcoin treasury companies are today. Bitcoin treasury companies today are not understood by investors overall. When you look at the traditional price to earnings ratios of traditional companies, these are in the 20 to 30x in terms of the Mag 7. And when you look at MSTR, that is in the 1.3x, a 30% premium to benefit for all the work of one of the best company in history for the remaining future. And so plus, of course, the Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And so the companies on the left have 20 to 30x valuation ratios, and they are valued purely on future potential expected results, which are hypothetical. And Bitcoin treasury companies, when you look at the P/B ratio, which analyzes the capacity of the company to cover its premium over time, is of 1.3x for MSTR, 0.15x for LCPB, for Capital B. Metaplanet and Smarter Web as well, given close to 1 MNAV currently, is very low, of course. And so what you can see here is you can either see that as something that is not comparable. It could be argued that price to earnings are not comparable to the capacity of the Bitcoin treasury companies to generate more Bitcoin per share and eat that premium over time in an accretive way. You could also see that as the opportunity of a lifetime, where an emerging asset class and industry is emerging, and investors don't know yet how to value that opportunity. We recently did a live stream with Yves Chefati, the founder and president of Tobam, the leading asset manager for Bitcoin in France since 2017. And Yves explains very clearly how Bitcoin treasury companies could very much have not yet known their all-time highs in terms of valuation premiums. Capital B is one of the top capital raising companies over in Europe. Over 200 plus issuers in Euronext and Euronext Growth in Europe, with 75 million of average raises, while Capital B is much higher than that, with 127 million year to date through equity, plus 151 million year to date through convertibles. And Capital B also has a 10 billion euros capital raise capacity that we definitely intend to tap into. Capital B has raised 53 million euros in 5 months, in the first ones, 163 million euros in the next 5 months, and already 65 million euros in a matter of 2 months. Capital B, with these activities, is the number 1 listed Bitcoin treasury company in Europe, the number 11 pure player Bitcoin treasury company in the world, and the first and largest euro-denominated Bitcoin treasury company. Capital B has grown its BTC stack by 70x year to date. That's a 6,945% increase year to date. And this chart is going up and to the right. Capital B in that context has been growing its daily average BTC accumulation pace by 11x since the start of the year. We were accumulating on average 0.7 BTC per day. We are now accumulating on average 7.9 BTC per day, and we are definitely looking forward to continue pushing that chart up and to the right in the future. Capital B has acquired 2,818 BTC since the adoption of our Bitcoin standard. You can see notably that we have been stacking Bitcoin like there is no tomorrow all over the summer. While the industry was going down overall, Capital B has accumulated 433 BTC, and then about 300 BTC, and then about 600 BTC more recently. Notably, while the industry was going down very significantly, Capital B increased its Bitcoin holding in one single operation by plus 500 BTC, which turned out to be one of the most valued private placement in the industry with a 2.3x premium in terms of fully diluted MNAV, which looking in the past was extremely accretive for our shareholders, and also quite important for the company to look at what could be the best instruments for the company to leverage into the future in terms of not only BTC denominated performance, but also considering fiat market impacts of its capital raising operations, of course, as we always do. Capital B has achieved a BTC yield of 1,600% plus year to date. This is a new chart. You can see here that you compare our sats per share, the Bitcoin per share, and as well on the other side in yellow, the LCPB, so Capital B share price, but denominated in sats. And what you can see here is that all shareholders, when you denominate the share in Bitcoin itself, have seen the number of sats per share, 720 sats per share as of today, go above the price of the share in SATS before May. And so the lesson here is Capital B is a Bitcoin treasury company. It's fully based on Bitcoin itself. There is a massive opportunity and a risk as well in the premiums. But if you have a sufficiently medium to long term time horizon, Capital B is working every day for its shareholders to maximize Bitcoin per share and to get that number of SAT per share to where the value of the share in SATs was in the past, and to grow that orange chart into the yellow part of the chart. Capital B has of course adopted key Bitcoin KPIs since the very beginning, invented by strategy. And when you look at our Q3 BTC gain as of year to date, but measured as of Q3, it's already 600 plus BTC added to the balance sheet without dilution. And so that is a massive gain for our shareholders, and that is our full focus, of course, every day. Capital B is now 182 BTC away from its FY 2025 high stacking target. We have already largely achieved the overall target between the lower bound and the high bound. We are in fact at 94% of our target for the end of the year. And we are very much looking forward to accelerating our financial instruments issuance capacity towards 21 to 42K BTC by FY 2028 to 2029, and hopefully before, if we are able, of course. And if we are able to execute on that plan, that is a long-term plan, Capital B could become Europe's largest publicly traded corporation. Thank you so much all for your attention, and I will be very much looking forward to your questions, and I think that we will also organize a live stream together with you to answer any questions in Q&As, both on the half-year results and as well on the Bitcoin treasury company strategy. Maybe to end, I would like to highlight that we are very much as well glad to have and consistently deliver profitable operational profitability together with the strongest balance sheet in the continent. Thank you so much all, and talk soon. Bye.